Hello, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Learn English with Maria podcast. I'm Sophie Turner.
And I'm Danial. We are absolutely thrilled to have you join us today for a conversation that we think is not just important, but truly transformational for your English learning journey.
Oh, absolutely, Daniel. Today, we're tackling a topic that I know resonates with so many of our listeners. Stop wasting your time. We've all been there, haven't we? Spending hours on something only to feel like we haven't made much progress.
Exactly, Sophie. And when it comes to English learning, wasting time can look like many things. It could be endlessly memorizing vocabulary lists without actually using the words, or maybe spending hours on grammar exercises that don't translate into better speaking.
Uh-huh. Or perhaps, and I know this one personally, just thinking about studying English, planning out elaborate study schedules, and then, well, not quite following through. It's that feeling of being busy but not productive, you know?
Oh, I definitely know. It's that cycle of good intentions. So our goal today is to help you break free from those time-wasting traps. We want to show you how to identify where you might be losing valuable minutes or even hours, and then, more importantly, give you practical, actionable strategies to redirect that energy into truly useful, immediate English practice.
Yes, immediate. That's the key word here. We're not talking about endless, long, drawn-out study sessions. We're focusing on highly effective, often short bursts of activity that bring real results. It's about working smarter, not just harder.
And making your English learning integrated into your daily life rather than seeing it as a separate, daunting task that you have to block out hours for. Many people feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of English material out there, and they don't know where to start or what's actually effective.
That's such a good point, Daniel. They feel like they need to sit down for 2 hours with a textbook, and if they don't have that block of time, they just don't do anything at all. And then the guilt sets in.
The guilt is a real progress killer. So let's dive right into some of these time wasters. Sophie, in your experience, what's one of the biggest ways English learners unintentionally waste their time?
Well, I would say one of the absolute biggest time wasters is passive consumption without active engagement. What I mean by that is you might be watching English movies, listening to podcasts, reading English articles, all great things, don't get me wrong. But if you're doing it purely passively without any specific goal or active participation, it becomes less effective.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like having the TV on in the background while you're doing chores. You're exposed to English, but are you truly learning from it? Probably not in the most efficient way.
Exactly. You might pick up a few things here and there, sure, but to truly accelerate your learning, you need to engage. For example, if you're watching a movie, instead of just watching, try to pause and repeat interesting phrases. Or if you're listening to a podcast, try to summarize it in your head afterward. That's shifting it from passive to active.
That active engagement is key. It forces your brain to process the language, not just let it wash over you. So how can our listeners immediately apply this, Sophie? What's a quick, useful thing they can do to make their passive consumption more active?
Great question. Here's something you can do right now, today, with any English content you consume. Let's say you're listening to an English song you love. Instead of just singing along, try to identify 3 new words or phrases you hear. Just 3. Write them down quickly, and then try to use one of them in a sentence later in the day. That's active engagement. Immediately.
I love that. 3 words, that's manageable. Not overwhelming, it takes minutes, and it immediately puts the new vocabulary into a practical context. What about another common time waster, Sophie?
Another big one is what I call perfection paralysis. This is when learners spend too much time trying to make everything absolutely perfect. Perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation, before they even open their mouths to speak. They'll spend hours studying rules, but they won't actually speak.
Oh, that's so real. They're afraid of making mistakes, aren't they? And that fear keeps them silent, even though speaking is the ultimate goal of learning a language for most people.
Precisely. And the truth is, you learn by making mistakes. Mistakes are feedback. If you wait until you're perfect, you'll never start speaking. And speaking is where so much of the real learning happens. You solidify what you know, and you quickly identify what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. So for perfection paralysis, what's an immediate actionable tip for our listeners? Something they can do today to overcome that?
Okay, here's a challenge. Today, find just 1 minute to speak English out loud. It doesn't have to be to another person. It could be to yourself in the mirror, describe your breakfast, talk about your plans for the day, or just read a short paragraph out loud. The goal is simply to get your voice, your mouth, and your brain used to producing English sounds, even if it's not perfect. Just 1 minute. That breaks the paralysis.
1 minute? That's incredibly accessible. No excuses there. I think that's a fantastic way to get started and build that habit. And it helps to remind yourself that nobody, not even native speakers, speaks perfectly all the time.
Exactly. We all make mistakes. We all stumble over words. The goal is communication, not flawlessness. And the more you speak, the less you'll stumble.
So, we've talked about passive consumption and perfection paralysis. Both are huge time wasters because they prevent real, active language use. What about the idea of long studies, as our listener put it? That feeling that you need hours and hours, or that English learning is this massive mountain to climb that requires endless, grueling effort.
That's a very common misconception, isn't it? Many people equate long studies with effective studies, but that's not always the case. In fact, consistently shorter, focused bursts of study are often far more effective than sporadic, long, and exhausting sessions. Your brain actually learns better in smaller, more frequent chunks.
Uh-huh. It's about consistency, not just quantity. So, how can our listeners shift their mindset from I need 2 hours to I can do this in 10 minutes?
Here's how. Identify just one English learning activity that he can do in 5 to 10 minutes. It could be listening to a short news clip and trying to pick out the main idea, reviewing 5 flashcards for new vocabulary, writing 3 sentences in English about your day, shadowing just 2 or 3 sentences from this podcast. The key is to have a go-to small activity that you can fit into the gaps of your day while waiting for coffee, on your commute, during a short break.
Oh, I love that. It's like having a mini English learning toolkit. And because it's short, it feels less daunting, and you're more likely to actually do it. And doing it consistently, even for just 5 minutes, adds up incredibly fast over a week, a month, a year.
It truly does. Imagine doing just 5 minutes of focused English practice 5 days a week. That's 25 minutes of active, useful practice. Over a month, that's well over an hour and a half. Over a year, that's almost 20 hours, all from just 5 minutes a day. That's not wasted time. That's incredibly well spent time.
That really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? It shifts the focus from feeling like you need a huge chunk of time to realizing that small, consistent efforts compound into significant progress.
Mm-hmm. And it helps combat that feeling of being overwhelmed too, because if you know you only need 5 or 10 minutes, it doesn't feel like a massive chore. It feels achievable.
So, to recap some of our initial time-wasting traps, passive consumption, perfection paralysis, and the misconception that only long study sessions are effective. And for each, we've offered immediate, actionable steps.
That's right. Identify 3 new words, speak for 1 minute, find a 5-10 minute go-to activity. These are all things you can implement right now.
But Sophie, what about people who feel like they're doing something, but they're not seeing results? Maybe they're reading, they're listening, they're even speaking a little, but they don't feel like they're improving. Is there a time waster embedded in that?
Oh, absolutely, Daniel. That often comes down to a lack of focused feedback or targeted practice. They might be putting in the hours, but if they're not getting feedback on their mistakes, or if they're not practicing the specific skills they need to improve, it can feel like spinning their wheels. For example, if your goal is better speaking, but you only read books, you might not see the speaking improvement you want.
That makes perfect sense. It's about aligning your actions with your goals. So if someone feels like they're just doing stuff, but not progressing, What's a quick fix for them?
The immediate fix is to perform a quick goal check-in. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I want to improve most in my English this week? Is it pronunciation? Is it using phrasal verbs? Is it being able to describe past events more smoothly? Once you have that one clear goal, for your next 5 or 10 minutes of English practice, only do something that directly addresses that goal.
So if my goal is pronunciation, I shouldn't be spending my 5 minutes on a grammar worksheet. I should be shadowing or repeating words after a native speaker.
Exactly. If your goal is to use more phrasal verbs, then maybe you find an article with phrasal verbs and actively try to use one in a sentence. It sounds simple, but that focused intention, even for a short time, is incredibly powerful. It ensures your effort is actually moving you towards your specific goal, rather than just being busy work.
That's about making every minute count towards a specific outcome, because time spent unfocused is often time wasted.
It really is, and it applies to every level of English learning, too, from beginners trying to master basic greetings to advanced learners refining their nuanced vocabulary. Everyone can benefit from being more intentional with their time.
So we've identified several common time wasters. Now let's talk about the flip side. What are some of those useful stuff strategies that our listeners can incorporate immediately into their day, beyond what we've already touched upon? What brings immediate results?
Excellent question. For immediate results, I am a huge proponent of what I call micro practice. This is even shorter than those 5-10 minute bursts. We're talking 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes.
Okay, now you're talking my language. Tell us more. What does micro practice look like?
Well, let's say you're waiting in line at the grocery store. Instead of scrolling on your phone, pick one thing around you, maybe a product on the shelf, and describe it in English in your head, or even out loud if you're brave, just for 30 seconds.
So it's about seizing those little, otherwise unproductive moments and turning them into English learning opportunities.
Precisely. Or if you're commuting, instead of just listening to music, try to describe your surroundings in English for 1 minute. I see a blue car. The traffic is heavy today. The sky is cloudy. Simple sentences.
That's brilliant. It makes English learning feel less like a chore and more like a constant, fluid part of your day. It's like a mental exercise.
It is. And because it's so short, there's no pressure. You're not trying to do an entire lesson. You're just activating your English brain for even a tiny moment. This keeps the language fresh in your mind and reinforces what you've learned.
So micro practice in those idle moments. That's a fantastic immediate tool. What else comes to mind when we talk about doing useful stuff that helps immediately?
I would say contextual vocabulary acquisition. Instead of just looking up a word in a dictionary and writing it down, which can be passive, immediately try to use that word in a sentence that's relevant to your life.
So if I learn the word ubiquitous, I shouldn't just write it down. I should immediately think, smartphones are ubiquitous nowadays.
Exactly. That immediate application makes the word stick so much better. It connects it to your personal experience and helps your brain form stronger pathways for recall. And you can do this with just one new word a day. Look up one word, use it in one sentence relevant to your life. That's 2 minutes of highly effective English practice.
That's about making learning personal and practical. And I imagine this also helps with remembering the word long-term because you've created a personal memory connection.
Oh, absolutely. The more personal the connection, the stronger the memory. And it helps you integrate new vocabulary into your active speaking and writing, not just your passive understanding.
So we've got active consumption, overcoming perfection paralysis, breaking down long studies into short bursts, focused feedback, micro-practice, and contextual vocabulary acquisition. Sophie, what about leveraging native speakers or finding conversation practice without it feeling like a huge scheduled effort? Because for many, finding a conversation partner feels like another big hurdle.
You're so right, Daniel. That can feel very daunting. But you don't always need a formal hour-long conversation. You can seek mini interactions. For example, if you're ordering coffee and you know the barista speaks English, maybe you try to ask one extra question beyond, "Can I get a coffee?" Maybe, "How's your day going?" Or, "What do you recommend?" Just one extra sentence.
So turning everyday encounters into brief English practice opportunities. I like that. It's about maximizing existing situations rather than creating new complex ones.
Precisely. Or, if you're online, instead of just lurking in English-speaking forums or social media groups, try to leave one short comment, just one sentence. "That's interesting," or "I agree." That's a mini interaction. It's not a full conversation, but it's active production.
That's really empowering because it lowers the barrier to entry. It makes conversation practice seem less like a formal event and more like a natural, spontaneous part of life.
Exactly. And every single one of those mini interactions builds confidence. The more you produce the language, even in tiny chunks, the more comfortable you become. And that comfort is what leads to fluency.
So, we've covered quite a lot of ground today on how to stop wasting time and instead engage in truly useful, immediate English learning. It all comes back to being intentional with every minute you dedicate to the language.
It's about shifting from quantity to quality, from passive to active, from fear to action. Remember, your brain loves novelty and consistency, even in small doses.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is progress, not perfection. And progress is built on those small, consistent, intentional actions.
We really hope this conversation has given you some clear, actionable strategies to implement right away. You don't need to wait for a perfect moment or a long block of time. You have moments throughout your day right now that can be transformed into powerful English learning opportunities.
So, we encourage all our listeners to pick just one, maybe two of these tips and try them out today. Don't plan, just do. That's the core of stopping time wasting.
Absolutely. Stop planning, start doing, and let us know how it goes. We love hearing about your progress.
Sophie, this has been a truly insightful conversation. I think our listeners have a lot of practical takeaways from this.
I agree, Daniel. It's empowering to realize that you have more control over your learning than you might think, and that you already have the time, you just need to redirect it.
Right. So, for everyone out there listening, go out there, embrace these immediate actions, and stop wasting your time. Your English will thank you for it.
We'll be back next time with more tips and strategies to help you on your English learning journey. Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep speaking.
Bye for now.